Let's bring in James Brown now. He's the non-resident fellow at the US Study Centre, also CEO of the Space Industry Association of Australia. Thanks, James, as always. This is a big win, big early win for President Biden.
Look, he got there with some degree of Republican support, and he got a number that I think it's not quite everything he'd hoped. It's not the size of check he'd hoped to send out to most Americans, but it's a big number. It's a huge bill. It's equivalent to Australia's GDP for a year, effectively, and it will have a calorific effect on the US economy. The question will be what the lasting effect is. The Democrats believe that it will shift inequality, that will set a better baseline for economic growth in the US over the next few years, and the Republicans have different views on that. But it shows that Biden has the ability to get legislation through, and that's going to be something that's very significant for his agenda. He's not a president hamstrung by not having control of the House and the Senate.
Let's turn our attention to the talks, very important talks over the next day or so with Prime Minister Morrison, President Biden, the Prime Minister of India and leader of Japan as well. This is called the Quadrilateral Security Dialogue. And for the first time, James, it's going to be at the leader level. Why is this so significant?
Well, this has been a meeting that's been 14 years in the making. It was 2007 when the idea of the leaders of Japan, India, the US and Australia meeting together to look at how to continue to run the many decades of prosperity and security that's been enjoyed in the Indo-Pacific. For a variety of reasons, it didn't happen, but it's been back on the agenda for the last couple of years. The foreign ministers met, I think it was last year or the year before. There's been various dialogues and discussions below the level of leaders, but now the Quad is being established. It's not an alliance, but it will be a very important grouping of countries able to push for those values that they share, which are really about democracy, international rule of law, security, and to an extent counteract some of the more recent steps of China in terms of its international presence and the way it intends to try and reshape the global order.
The US really putting its efforts and support behind this under the Biden administration. Is this a way of, do they see this as a way of burden sharing with allies?
Well, I think they've gone out of their way to do two things. One is to show that they're not going to be weak on China. The first phone call between Biden and Xi Jinping was a tough and testy phone call. There were a lot of difficult issues raised. And secondly, to show that they're going to use allies, that they're going to build with allies, they're not going to go it alone. That's a signature part of President Biden and Secretary Blinken's foreign policy. So the Quad it fits neatly into both of those themes. This meeting has come together quite quickly. There's still a lot of behind-the-scenes logistics going on to work out what the outcomes of the meeting will be. We know that there'll be some discussion about actions those four countries might take together to make sure that people in our part of the world get access to various vaccines. So we'll look for an announcement on that. And we'll also look for a statement by the four leaders on where they see this next steps for the Quad will be.
Now, just finally, I've noticed that the European Parliament has passed a carbon border tax likely to start by 2023. The reason I'm raising it in the context of the US relationship is because obviously the US administration also very much focused on climate. It's almost like a pincer move. We're being squeezed from Europe, from the UK and the United States. I think the Morrison government, though, edging towards a very much different language, and they get the international situation, I think.
I think so. We've seen a change in language. I think we've seen a change in tone, importantly, on some of the ways we're talking about these developments. The world is going to shift in this direction. It's not just the US and Europe, it's also China as well. It's made some quite significant announcements on what it plans to do with emissions and how it plans to address climate change. So Australia is going to need to live with that reality and move towards that reality. So we're going to need to adapt and respond to those measures consistent with our own policies and our own politics, which are quite different to Europe and the US when it comes to climate.
We sure are. James Brown, thank you very much.